Greetings. I am Richard Taylor, the author of Brushes with Death, The Blood of Jesus, also wrongfully accused, rightfully acquitted, and my third book, which will be forthcoming, Son of a Preacher Man, Realities from My Father, all of which are available on Amazon, Kindle, ebook, all of those things. But I just want to come in this time to just give a little bit of inspiration. As you see from the title, I decided to do a little thing called Testimony Tuesday, which I, kind of spin off of my father's segment that he does every week. It's called Wednesday Witness for Christ. My father is once again my third book is a tribute to him and the things I learned from him. So I just want to do something, just inspirational. It's been on my mind to do even before this time of calamity that we're experiencing. But I just want to do a little testimony. I plan on doing one every week. And that's just a little testimony about the power of prayer and fasting. And I'll jump right into it. On August the 12th of last year, 2019, I was arrested in Virginia Beach for a probation violation. I have been on probation since the year of 2008 for an incident that happened, and that's another testimony in itself, and I'll get back to that at a later date. However, I was arrested for probation violation in jail without bond in Virginia Beach. And the charge was a violation of probation for failing several substance abuse tests over the 11-year period that I was on probation. And, I was in jail for a period of about 2 months pending a court date, which was on October the 7th. And during that time, as I do many of the times that I have been incarcerated, I always turn to the Bible. I always turn to God. I always turn to the scriptures. I always turn to pray. And, this time was no different. Because of my background and because this was my second violation on an 8-year sentence, I was looking at about a year and a half in jail. That was the minimum, considering the guidelines that Virginia wanted to implement because of my history and, because of the nature of my record. So when I was in there, my lawyer, she kept giving me, the guidelines, as they call them. And she specified that they would be a year and a half to 2 years. But at my preliminary hearing, I heard the prosecuting attorney tell the judge that my guidelines was 0 to 90 days. But evidently he had made a mistake in the paperwork. So I was thinking the whole while, even though my lawyer was saying a year and a half to 2 years, I was thinking, well, I heard the DA say 0 to 90 days. So I was banking on that. Nevertheless, I still, wanted to put everything in God's hands and not take anything to chance. So during the 56 days that I was waiting for court, I turned back into the Word, started fasting. I fasted 1 day a week, then I fasted twice a week, then I fasted 3 days a week. So during that total time, I probably fasted about 12 days, eating nothing, drinking nothing, and just pouring out to God and making my requests known. I'm no stranger to being incarcerated, but at the age of 41, I was just at my wit's end, and I determined that that would be my last time, facing any legal ramifications because of my behavior and basically my overall lack of obeying God in my life. And so I turned to God. I constantly prayed, constantly read scriptures, and I had 3 requests before God, constantly each day and every day. I asked him for 3 specific things. One was to turn the judge's heart in my favor when I go to court on October the 7th. Also, that he would release me from jail on that specific day, and also release me from probation. Those were three specific requests that I made known to God, during that 56 days period. And I laid before the Lord. I turned to the wall like Hezekiah in Second Kings, First Kings, which one of them? Who when the Lord said he would die, he turned to the Lord and he fasted and prayed, and the Lord gave him an extra 15 years. Now, once again, that's just my faith. I prayed to God and asked for faith. I didn't know whether he was going to hear me because of I've been in this situation time and time again. Nevertheless, I put my faith in God, and the morning of October the 7th, I was called down for court with a group of inmates shackled, to about 20 guys. Went down to the basement underneath the court where the holding cells were, where everybody waited for their court cases to be called. And we're all in a bullpen. Each lawyer would come to the gate to their specific client, and they would discuss, the deals or the agreements that they were going to make with the judge or the DA before they got into the courtroom, so everything would go smoothly. If you ever been in the system, 95% of cases are handled by plea agreements. So when it came to my turn, my lawyer came up to the door and she was like, "Well, Mr. Taylor, this is what we have here." I talked to the DA, and he's willing to offer you the minimum of 1 year and a half. You plead to that, and you would do the year and a half, or about 14 months. But if you do the drug program that is in the jail, you will be eligible for reconsideration. That means after I completed the drug program, they would have brought me back before the judge, and he would have been able to let me out. But it would at least take me at least 9 months to even finish that, and there was no guarantee. And most importantly, my probationary sentence would have started over. So where I was scheduled to be released from probation in 2019, I would have had an extra 8 years if I would have took that plea agreement. So nevertheless, I considered it. I knew what I prayed to God about, and I told the lawyer, well, I can't do that. I've only failed drug tests. I haven't been in any trouble. I've been a productive citizen. I've worked. I've actually attained a degree. I made significant accomplishments. So, I think that's a little bit steep, but my lawyer, she said, well, no, this is, that's what they have on the table. I think it's pretty good. You could get 2 years if you put it in the judge's hands. And I just negated, I always, if you negate the first offer, they always come with a better offer. So I negated that offer and told them to go back in there and see what else you can do. Tell them I'm not willing to do that year and a half. So, a couple of more cases got called. Other guys came and went, got their sentences, got their judgments. And also, the lawyer finally came back, Ms. Tebow. She came back and said, well, Mr. Taylor, I think this is really good. You would actually be stupid not to take this. The judge, the DA said he's going to give you a year. Now, with that year, you're going to have to do the whole year. However, there would be no reinstatement of probation, which means after I did the year, I would have been released from probation. So that was kind of enticing because, I wanted to be done with the case. The case was only already 12 years old, so I want to be done with the case. And so that was kind of enticing to me. But, I still had that promise and that request I made to God. And so I was like, I'm not really sure. And, she was kind of getting frustrated because I was making her job a little bit harder. Every lawyer wants to go into court with an already prearranged agreement. So I told her, I'm not sure. Let me think about it. And so she said, okay, I'm going to go back in and I'll come back. However, she never came back. And then the bailiff came to get me and said, Mr. Taylor, your court case is ready. So she didn't, reconfer with me. So I went in the courtroom, saw my mother, my father, and a couple of other supporters in the courtroom. And I looked at them and I just told her, okay, I'm probably going to do about 8 more months because I already been in there 2 months. So looked at my mom, was like 8 more months, and she was like, she shook her head, yeah. And so when my lawyer started talking to me, she was like, she just went on ahead and made the agreement, you know what I mean, with the prosecutor. And when they called my case to order, the prosecutor handed the judge the guidelines. And he said, Your Honor, I made a mistake at the preliminary. I told you Mr. Taylor's guideline was 0 to 90 days, but unfortunately, I made a mistake, and his guidelines are 1.5 to 2 years. And so the judge looked at the case, and he looked at the paperwork, and he asked the prosecutor, he said, what makes his guidelines increase so much? And the prosecutor said, well, Judge, Your Honor, when I was figuring the guidelines, I see where in 2014, Mr. Taylor was charged with 5 felonies. However, those felonies were dismissed, but because of the guidelines, just being charged with those felonies raised the time limit up from 90 days to 1.5 to 2 years. So the judge looked at the paperwork, and the judge made a statement that I've never heard come from a judge. He told the prosecutor, well, this is unconstitutional. He said, why should Mr. Taylor be punished for crimes that he didn't commit, that he was found not guilty of? And the prosecutor responded, yes, sir, I know, but that is the case here in Virginia. And, that's what made the guidelines to increase that. So the judge started quoting different cases, and he pretty much just I watched God once again turn his heart in my favor, and as he was talking and pleading my case basically to the DA, he caught himself and said, okay, I'm sorry, let me be quiet because it seems that you guys have an agreement already set in stone, and so we're going to go ahead with that. But as the judge was talking, I was making certain facial expressions to agree with him, like, yeah, why should I be, penalized for things I didn't do? And the judge looked at me, he said, well, I'm going to go ahead and, let you guys present the order, but I can tell you this, your client doesn't look like he's really wanting to accept this deal. And I certainly would say this, if it was in my hands, I certainly wouldn't give him 1.5 years. And actually, I wouldn't even give him 1 year. And so when I heard that, I looked at my lawyer and I was like, I do not want to take that agreement, because I watched God answer my prayer right there in the court, where he turned that judge's heart right in my favor. And so when I rejected that plea deal right there in the court, my lawyer, she kind of ruffled up paperwork, and because I made her job a little bit harder. So we went on with the case and put the case, my fate in the judge's hand. And so the prosecutor got up and he started running down all of my record, my previous charges, even the amount of drug tests I failed, which was 11 over the 11-year period. So, it was what it was. It was true facts, but he presented the information and gave his recommendation. However, when my lawyer was to present my information, she presented certain accomplishments, my pay stubs, my degree. She presented the court with 2 of the books that I've written, and she also presented a typed letter that my mother had given as a character reference. And when the judge began to read that letter, he came across my family's background, which stated my father was in the Navy. And he looked at me and said, oh, Mr. Taylor, you were in the Navy. And I realized that he was talking about my father. So I said, no, sir, that was my father who was in the Navy. And now my father was sitting in the courtroom, and the judge addressed my father, said, oh, Mr. Taylor, where did you, where did you serve? What ship were you on? And he was like, I was in Norfolk, and they found a common ground because the judge also served in the Navy. So once again, I just watched God turn the judges, uh, turn the judge in my favor right then and there. So they continued on. He continued on to read the letter, and he got to the part where my mother said that they lived in Goldsboro, North Carolina. And once again, the judge's eyes lit up. He said, "Oh, you're from Goldsboro. I am from Greenville. Actually, my grandmother stays in Greenville. I went to UNC, but everybody wanted me to go to ECU." And so him and my mother started conversing from the bench into the audience. And, once again, I just watched God just, turn that judge's heart in my favor right then and there. And so, after the conversation, he read the letters. He looked at, all the exhibits that my lawyer handed him. And he looked at me and said, "Mr. Taylor, I don't see any reason for you to, be sitting in jail for a year and a half. I mean, it's obvious that you do have an abuse problem, but I don't see, why that you should be sitting in jail. I mean, you've been productive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to release you from jail today. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to release you from this probation. This has been 10 years, and, I feel strongly about these cases have got to end sometime." And so he basically released me scot-free from jail and the year sentence that I was expecting right then and there in the courtroom, because I only can think about my prayers and the sacrifice of fasting that I had made. Even though when I went in, I didn't see that he was going to answer my prayers. I had already accepted the fact that I would have to do a year. But nevertheless, he showed me that, he honors prayers, he honors sacrifice, even in the time of wrongdoing. If you turn to the Lord, he will hear your cry and hear your plea. And even, as I talked with my mother later, and she said when I told her the 8 months, she just shook her head, but she said I was still in there praying. I was still praying silently. And so that just showed me once again the marvelous wonders of prayer and the effectual fervent prayers of righteous people. They avail much. So I'm very thankful that I was raised in a household that taught me how to pray, taught me how to believe, taught me faith in God. And that faith was, allow me to move a mountain, to see the goodness and the glory of God right before my face, where he answered those 3 specific prayers, right before my eyes. So I just want to, give glory to God and, glory and honor to, Jesus, as my shirt said, because, that the prayer and fasting really works, and especially in this time, there's no other recourse that we have but prayer and fasting and belief that God is going to turn things around in our favor. He's still going to answer prayer. He's still in control, no matter what things look like. So I just want to to give some inspiration to people who may be going through things, whether it's sickness, whether it's legal problems, financial problems, relationship problems, whatever it may be. If you turn to God, he is definitely a prayer answer. He answered even the sinner's prayer. At that time, I wasn't living a life fully and totally acceptable to God, and when he did that, I made a vow to God that I'm going to live my life for him totally. And that led me to going to Life Changers Outreach to actually address my substance abuse problems that I battled for the better part of 3 decades, and get that finally behind me with the help of God, and with the help of some good pastors there, some good brethren, some good testimony, some good Bible study, and some just turning away. The Second Chronicles 7:14. If my people who are called by my name, turn from their wicked ways, seek God's face, humble themselves and pray, then he will hear from heaven. He will forgive their sins first of all, and then also heal their land. So I'm just grateful to be able to tell this testimony because there's a lot of people, whether no matter what their addiction is, whether it's alcohol, drugs, whether it's sex, gambling, even abusive relationships. If you've been in a relationship and being abused for about 7 years, you're suffering from an addiction to pain or whatever. But a lot of people walk around with masks on, and me myself, I was very good at wearing that mask. I dressed good, I talked good, I worked good, I looked good, I always provided for myself. But I always had that mask on, hiding the fact that, I struggle with something. So, whatever that mask is, I know a lot of people, I've been with people who struggle with similar things, and, they have a good mask on. But I was just tired of wearing that mask. So that's what made me just, give it all to God. And, if anybody who is struggling with any type of thing, my advice and my encouragement is to give whatever situation that you are facing to God. Put it totally in His hands, and He will see you through. And I just want to once again give God the glory, the honor, the power, and the praise for this testimony. Once again, this Tuesday testimony, and I just want to thank you guys for listening. And if you are on YouTube, you can hit the like button or the subscribe button. I don't have a bunch of fancy equipment. I just want to, tell a story and hopefully encourage somebody that don't know the word of prayer, or even do know the word of prayer, but are scared to pray for fear that God will not hear them. I'm living in proof that, I've been in many situations, and those testimonies are forthcoming. But I know that God answers prayer if you believe, and if you seek His face diligently, He will answer your prayer. So I thank you so much for turning in. Once again, this is Richard Taylor, author of Brushes with Death, the Blood of Jesus, Wrongfully Accused, Rightfully Acquitted, and a few other books. But definitely, I am excited about the opportunity to continue to share these testimonies with you. So until next Tuesday, I wish you peace, blessings, most of all, good health, and provisions during this time. And God bless you, each and every one of you guys. Y'all have a great and prosperous day. Once again, stay well.